let's draw a picture. I don't want to erase that because I'm going to come back to that. Let's draw a picture. We have our signification here, S-I-G-N-I-F-I-C-A. We have our signification here. We have our signal here, G. We have this relationship. This relationship is a sign, right, as we know. And this is the primary source of meaning. And I actually should have drawn a diagram, but you know, it's fine. So this is the primary source of meaning. The sign is a combination of the signification and the signal, and this combination of the signification and the signal is our primary source of meaning. The secondary source of meaning, as he says, is the relationship between signs and signs. So what I need is I need to draw this image again, and then relate it to a sign, right? So then a secondary source of meaning would be this. The relationship between sign, if I could draw it right, and we have signification, and we have signal, and we have that, and we have that, and then we have our secondary. Right? Alright, so primary source, secondary source. Our primary source is constituted, I want to make this extremely clear. Our primary source is constituted by this, if you will, this vertical relationship, right? This vertical relationship between the internal components of the sign, the signal and the signification, vertically defined, is our primary source of meaning. This horizontal relationship, just sort of figuratively, but this is not even just me. Saussure actually says it. He doesn't spell it out the way I'm spelling it out, but this is what he means. This horizontal relationship, this relationship between relating signs, is our secondary source of meaning, and it's defined by sort of this horizontal relationship. So within a sign, the dynamic relationship of a signal and a signification within a sign is our primary source of meaning. Our secondary source of meaning is to look at signs as one facet, one unit, though we understand that they has counterparts, and compare the two. Okay, so vertical, primary, horizontal, secondary. With respect to counterparts, there's another thing, right? There's a lot, as I said, just the first two bullet points, conceptions of linguistic meaning. As I said, I knew it was going to take quite a bit of time to explain because it's not apparent at all, and Saussure's language is a bit cryptic, and I'll read it again. It's a bit cryptic in this section. The next thing to recognize is the relationships of counterparts, right? This is all, it's all very, very important that you understand this sort of relational structure, because without an understanding of the relational structure internally and externally, you're not really going to be able to understand the function of sort of value, because value develops out of one of these relationships, and I'll talk about that in a second. With respect to counterparts, right, and we'll say semiological, S-E-M-I-O-L-O-G-I. With respect to semiological counterparts, we recognize that internally, I-N-T-E-R-N-A, internally, that's internally to the sign, the signification is the counterpart of the signal, right? We recognize that the signification is the counterpart to the signal. So that sig is counterpart to, they're both sig. Sig meaning signification, S-I-G-N. The signification is the counterpart to the signal, right? So internally, the signification is the counterpart to the signal. Not only is it the counterpart to the signal, but obviously it is. This relationship between the signal and the signification, meaning is sort of rested in, and this is very, very important because this is where Lacan is going to sort of challenge some of these initial concepts. The signification becomes sort of the seat of meaning internal to the sign, right? That's the only way I know how to say it. The signification becomes sort of localized, the localized component of meaning internally to the sign, right? So that the sig is a counterpart to the signal, it's internal, and we get that. External, or relationally, R-E-L-A-T-I-O-N-A-L. I don't even know if you spell that right. I don't even know if that's a word. But external or relationally, and I'm sure it is, I'm comparing sign to sign, right? If I'm comparing sign to sign, then I'm assuming that the sign has its own counterparts, right? The counterpart to the sign isn't another sign. The counterpart to the sign are its signal and signification, right? So internally, signal and the signification is a counterpart to the signal. Externally, then the counterparts to the sign are its signal, and its signification. And this is, I forgot to put this is primary, and this is secondary. Alright. Whoa. What does that mean? Okay, now I understand that. What does that, well, I hope you understand that. That's sort of the technical way of describing it. Now I'll give you a more sort of intro friendly. Let's look at the example that we were given before. So Saussure gives us this and this, right? So we have tree and tree. The relationship between tree and tree, the sound pattern tree, and the concept or the signification tree is this is a sign as both structures, right? So actually I should put it like this, sign, right? So this is my sign. We know that this is the signification. We know that this is the signal. And we know that this relationship, this internal relationship of the sign, is a primary source of meaning. Okay? So we know that it's a primary source of meaning. I didn't really prepare. You know, there's only so many images because I have to draw these images in Microsoft Paint and then copy it in. So I didn't want to put all of this in the notes because it's just too, you know, it would be too much stuff for me to it takes more time. It's easier for me to draw it on the board. I don't want to erase this bit yet. What I need to do now is compare signs, right? I need a secondary source of meaning. Well, how would I compare it? Well, the relationship between the concept tree and the tree itself could be something related to, and I always think, me personally as a philosopher, I always think about Plato's Allegory of the Cave. If I remember, it's been a decade literally since I've read the Allegory of the Cave, but I think when he comes out of the cave, before he looks at the sun, I think he looks at a tree, and then he looks at the sun. He's almost blinded, right? So let's just use the sun, right? So I have sun, and then I have sun. Right? The comparison of this sign, I can't really, well, I'll write it here. The comparison of this sign with this sign, the comparison of my sign, sun, as a sound pattern to my conception or my signification, sun, internally is primary, but comparing the signs, sun to tree, is secondary. Right? This is a secondary source of meaning. And what might that meaning be? It might be, let's say, for example, I'm developing some ecological, semiological conception of meaning, right? The significance of sort of ecosystems, eco-preservation. I might be able to very, very gradually build on a collection of signs to create a nexus, if you will, right? So we can have a web of signs, right? Let's say we label this sign, sign 1, the sign tree as 1. We label sun 2. We label water 3. We label rock, earth, fire, air, blah, blah, blah. Then it would be like this would be 1, this would be 2, this would be 3, this would be 4, 5, 6, so on, so on, so on. And what I'm doing now is I'm creating and this is the way, you know, real good research is done, is we begin with a base, and from that base we connect our concepts, literally. I mean literally connect our concepts. I mean, and when I say literally, I mean literally, right? We connect our concepts, our significations, our signified, to each other through this establishment of secondary meaning, right? And this is the deeper meaning of, you know, there's a superficial read of a text, and then there's a literal read of a text, and then there's this deeper read of a text. My argument, at least, is this deeper read is provided by the nexus of interconnection between signs, right, as secondary sources of meaning. And I don't think, and I know for a fact this conception of secondary source of meaning is important within semiology, because as a discipline that looks at linguistics as object, we have to recognize that within linguistics we can't really get to the moral of the story in the literal read of the story, right? The moral of the story, right? Three little pigs, right? One pig built a house of straw, one pig built a house of, I don't know, wood or something, the other one built it out of concrete, and the whole moral is to work hard. Well, I mean, you don't get that from the direct literal interpretation. There's subtext, right? This subtext, the way that the real masters of language arrive at this extreme, and it gets deeper than this, it gets way deeper than this, arrive at this really, really dense, really, really latent, abstracted subtext, is that they recognize and they connect signs to signs, right? The secondary source of meaning is important. So the reason why I wanted to take so much time, I've spent probably an hour, or maybe not an hour, I've spent probably, I don't know how far I'm into the video, maybe 30, 40 minutes into the video now, and I've only talked about the first two bullet points under the concepts of meaning, right? Why is it important to understand this? Because you, as a scholar, as a graduate student, as whatever it is that you are, you need to recognize the distinction of meaning internal to the sign and meaning external to the sign. Meaning internal to the sign is the relationship between signification and signal, and it's a primary source of meaning. Meaning external to the sign is a relationship between signs, and it's a secondary source of meaning. Further, the connection of secondary sources of meaning create a web, because there has to be a continuum, right? There has to be a tapestry on which all of this is built. And in the example that I'm constructing here, between tree and tree, sun and sun, water, water, you know, so on and so forth, the connection, this circle might be represented by sort of eco-consciousness, environmental consciousness might be the grand narrative that is being told, right? It might be the grand sign that's being told, and all of these other signs are sort of subordinate. That's a good way of understanding it. Grounded theory is good for this as well, right? Grounded theory is, you can use grounded theory and semiotics sort of to help each other, because and I'm not going to go too deep, but in grounded theory, I'm looking at the data to extrapolate the theory from the data. What's good about that is that from that data, signs are going to, in grounded theory it's more themes, right? But it's roughly the same. Themes are going to start to bubble to the surface, and from those themes we're going to construct this tapestry. Similarly in semiotics, for example, what I do, and what I'm like 99% going to do, I have 2 or 3 projects I have to wrap up, but what I'm going to do before the end of the year, hopefully, is write something not too big, but, you know, big enough, about the secondary sources of meaning within hate speech, right? Here's the primary sources of meaning in hate speech, but here's the secondary sources of meaning in hate speech, right? So it's very, very important. I was encouraged by my viewers to take it deep, so hopefully that's pretty deep. That's pretty deep.